This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Exciting things happening in the association, and we got some great stuff rolling out for this week's show. And you know I got a lot to say. You know I got my partner who's ready to talk about some things happening in the NBA. So you know I'm not going to waste any time to bring out my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, dime contributor, writer for one of the illest websites, www.shawsports.net, the Big Kahuna and PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Can you believe that this week it's going to be somewhere around the mid 60 to 70 degrees, brother? I mean, I feel like Jersey is going to be South Beach, like come this week, man. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm happy for you, man. You definitely deserve
it. For 2 days.
Hey, man, I know you're up there. I got my folks up there as well, too. So hopefully you guys get to enjoy this warm weather. But it's getting hot on the basketball floor and here in the NBA. And that's what we're here to discuss. Salute to all the fans listeners of the NBA Baseline. Thanks for tuning in to us each and every single week. We have a great show on top, man. I think some great topics that you guys are going to enjoy.
Most definitely, man. In a little bit, we have our man, Jason Patt. He is a premier writer, managing editor for today's Fast Break, and he also contributes for Bloggable for SB Nation. He's going to help us discuss about the state of the Chicago Bulls. Some great info and insight being provided to us there. In our segment of The Drop, we're going to be talking about the Boston Celtics. Should we start considering this as an elite team in the Eastern Conference? My man Shaw and I will weigh in, and then we'll also talk about what is going on in Cleveland. The drama, it just never seems to end, but the drama is not more in the basketball court. It's what's happening off the court. Can LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love coexist to finally bring a championship to the city of Cleveland? We'll get into all of that. And of course, we got our coveted Coast to Coast, where we discuss all the news happening in the association. So a lot of great stuff happening, a lot of great topics to break down. And once again, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on and supporting the Baseline NBA podcast. You know how to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. But we always encourage you to get at the show's Twitter handle at NBA_the Baseline. Hashtag up the Baseline. Let us know who you are, what you're about. Available on all the major platforms. Available on Microsoft TuneIn, Stitcher Radio, Player FM, and iTunes. Of course, iTunes, one of the major platforms for any kind of podcast. So be sure to download any one of those platforms and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things NBA. Special shout outs to our people on Rabble TV. Be sure to go to www.rabbletv to check out the Baseline live, and to also check out when Shaw and I do our thing on the live broadcast. Man, we love talking basketball. And as we come down to the home stretch of regular season and playoff games, we will definitely be doing it on Rabble. So without further ado, you know how we like to set things off. It is time now, ladies and gentlemen, for the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. This week we have an excellent guest on tap with us here to help discuss pretty much a team that has us like in flux and scratching our heads, saying, where did it all go wrong? It was all good just a week ago, and we're talking about a Chicago Bulls team, which we were probably saying, if fully healthy, could possibly be one of those contenders to kind of really push the Cleveland Cavaliers. And ever since the injury to Butler, it's just been completely spiraled out of control. Our man Jason Patt, he is the managing editor for today's Fast Break, and he's also contributor for Bloggable, SB Nation. Jason, thanks for hopping on with us this week to talk about the Bulls.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Jason, look, I know not just being an avid follower, but you're also a person who watches this team very closely, and you look at what's happened ever since Jimmy Butler suffered that knee strain against the Denver Nuggets. And it just seems like it's more than just this team not playing good basketball that has kind of helped them suffer and push them down to where now struggling to even get the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference. Do you notice anything more about how much the effect of Butler's injury really hampered this basketball team since that time frame?
Yeah, and I think you could even go back further than the Butler injury and look back to when Joakim Noah got hurt too as well. Even though Noah hasn't played as well this year, just they're pretty deep in the front court, and he's kind of been struggling. Just the whole the defense as a whole really kind of just started falling apart once Noah got hurt. And then when you lose Butler as well, who's your best perimeter defender, and the Bulls were just playing a ton of guys that just couldn't really play defense. When you have Powell playing huge minutes in the middle, you have Doug McDermott getting a lot of minutes, you have Aaron Brooks getting a lot of minutes, Rose has been in and out of the lineup. So when you have all these guys out missing time and you're trying to play these guys that just aren't as good, it's just a cascading effect. And we've really seen that with the Bulls' defense. It's especially with Butler out, the defense was basically a train wreck. They did have the 1-3-game winning streak, but that was kind of a fluke. And a lot of the other games, just every game, teams are getting wide open shots, getting easy layups. So you look at the Noah injury, you look at when Butler was hurt, and then Mirotic was hurt as well, that they just didn't have the guys to play good defense, and it showed in the record.
So I love what you're talking about there, because this Bulls team has had a lot of adversity over the years in general, and obviously this year has been no different. People in and out of the lineup, as you mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned Mirotic there. Taj Gibson has been battling injuries the entire season. Even Powell, who's played most of the games, he's been battling some nagging injuries as well. But how much of that is contributed to, not just the injuries per se, but even the coaching change with Fred Hoiberg to the lack of the defense that the Bulls have played this season?
Yeah, it's tough. When they were healthy at the beginning of the year, they were playing pretty well defensively. I was still never convinced they were all that good. I mean, they were clearly pretty good, but I know Fred's not really considered a defensive guy, so going from a guy like Tibbs to Fred is definitely a change in terms of the focus on the defensive end. But even last year under Tibbs, the Bulls were starting to slip defensively, and then this year they, like I said, they started well, but lately they've been terrible. Just because I think it's more the personnel. I don't know. Obviously, like I said, Fred's not the defensive mastermind of Tibbs, but I don't even know if Tibbs would be able to make a great defense out of some of the lineups that they've had to use. So I think while the coaching does play some part into it, I think more of it's just the talent that's been available on the floor.
Jason Patt joining us here. Be sure to catch him on Twitter at Bulls_J. So Jason, I'm looking up and down at the recent games that the Bulls have played, and it boggles my mind that I've yet to see them defensively keep a team under 100 points. I mean, how shocking is that for you? It's not so much the fact that we're asking them to play Tom Thibodeau-like type defense, but even to the idea that you're conceding that Hoiberg is supposed to help this team improve offensively, to see that much of a difference from a defensive perspective against teams that struggle even offensively to drop 100 on this Bulls team. I mean, how much of a shock is that to you?
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Like the 2-game swing they had down in Florida last week or whatever was just really awful. They gave up almost 130 points to Miami. They gave up over 100 to the Magic, and that game should have been an even bigger blowout. But the Magic kind of fell apart at the end. It was a little closer, but you just see that, and the effort, the miscommunication on defense. There's just so many breakdowns that have been happening every game, and just really disappointing. Even yesterday in the game they won, they gave up 100 again, but they gave up a lot of open threes. Luckily, the Rockets have been just a huge disappointment this year, but I wouldn't say they played that much better defensively. It was just, thank God the Rockets missed all their shots. And having Jimmy back did really help on guarding James Harden, because Harden had a big game, but Butler slowed him down when he did guard him. But yeah, just on the whole, his defensive breakdowns, there's no communication. And they talk about it every game about how they need to just toughen up, they got to be better, they got to avoid these breakdowns, but it's not happening.
Well, with Jimmy Butler back, this team now, obviously, they also got Mirotic back over the weekend too. This team is now trying poised to make a run. Do you see this as a team that is definitely going to finish in the playoffs, and how high do you see them going in terms of their seeding?
I still do think they'll make the playoffs as long as there aren't any more completely debilitating injuries, like if Butler goes out again for the season or something, or even if Powell went out or something like that. I still think they will get in just because there is the talent there with Butler, with Powell, and with Rose and some of these other guys. They should still probably be decent. I mean, all those teams down at the bottom of the East are really kind of scrunched up right now, because you have the Bulls that are 31-30, currently the 8th seed, but then they're only right now 3 games behind the Hawks. I don't know if they would catch them. The Hawks are playing a little bit better lately. They're a couple games behind the Hornets. I guess theoretically you could see them maybe getting to the 6th spot, maybe the 5 spot if a lot of things went right. I don't know about that. So they'll most likely, if they do make the playoffs, which I still think they will, they'll probably be on the road in the first round. And if they have to play a team, Celtics or the Heat or the Raptors, I mean, I know they've had some success against the Raptors in the regular season. I mean, maybe the Bulls could win the series. Obviously, like I said, they have the talent where theoretically, if it came together, sure, maybe they can, but right now I would guess that they'd probably be a first round exit.
Managing editor Jason Patt joining us here for today's Fast Break, also contributes for Bloggable. Be sure to go to www.todaysfastbreak.com. Jason, as you look at this Bulls team as it's constructed, there's going to have to be a lot of things happening, come this offseason. How important is their play down the stretch, and how important is their play in the first round of the playoffs going to affect some of the decisions that the Bulls are going to need to make? I think everybody has basically said, and if it almost to the point where, it just feels like, you're beating an incessant drum, that the Bulls have waited too long to make certain moves to really dictate the direction of where this team is going. So now we fast forward to the playoff time, and if they do make the playoffs, how important will their play in the playoffs affect the decisions that are going to have to happen come this offseason?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like if they get in and they win a series or they win 2 series somehow, like I feel like that would almost leave the front office thinking, oh, okay, like this is fine. Like we can just kind of do the status quo thing like they did last year and be like, well, if we were healthy the entire year, like we saw what happened at the end of the season, like we're still right there. Just some things can go our way. Like, and I feel like that would be a mistake, I guess. Like like I said, I would never hope for my team to just like completely bomb out. But I don't think missing the playoffs or losing in the first round would be the worst thing in the world if it maybe it has the front office really look within and say, was what we're doing really working? Because I think that they don't really have to like completely blow it up or rebuild or something like that. Like they have some really talented players in place. They have a star player in Jimmy. Rose has been looking better. He's still not totally reliable, but they have some decent parts, Mirotic, Bobby Portis, so they can kind of retool around and not necessarily rebuild. And with the cap going up, and they'll have a draft pick. They could still get the Kings pick, so they could have 2 first-round picks this year. And they could possibly have a nice little retool, not necessarily rebuild, but retool, and maybe hopefully get younger and try to move forward around and with Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose in the backcourt maybe. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the playoffs, what happens moving forward. I hope no matter what happens that they realize that they probably should make some changes.
So, I mean, I want to even kind of touch on that point a little bit further because, earlier we were discussing the fact that I feel like they can get maybe as high as 6, but not necessarily no matter what, but that they have a very good potential of being a first round out. And I think the consensus around league is that, yeah, they might be a first round. They're going to be a very tough one, but they very well could easily beat anybody in the Eastern Conference as well. How do you see this, I guess, in essence, shaking out for this team, especially if they are going to make the playoffs? Is there a team, I know you said maybe Toronto, but is there a team that you see them matching up a little bit better against? And then again, subsequently, what would happen, to this team as a result of a win?
Right, yeah. I mentioned Toronto. The Bulls have won something like 7 or 8 straight regular season games against them. Obviously, the playoffs are a different beast, but the Raptors, as good as the Raptors are, they're 41-19. They're right in the Cavs' tails, and they're winning big again today. They've kind of had their own playoff problems in the last few years. So I know that leaves some people feeling somewhat confident if they do play. Like I said, I would not pick the Bulls if they end up in the 7 they played the Raptors. I think it would obviously be a very competitive series. Could the Bulls win? Sure, why not? They have the talent, and if it came together, they could. Looking at the other teams, the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics have really come on strong. They're another team though where you wonder if they'll be how good they'll be playoff wise, just because they don't theoretically have that star player. Isaiah Thomas is really good, but they still need to prove in the playoffs. The Heat have the Chris Bosh question, and they've looked really good as well of late. But if Bosh isn't back, I mean, so that's like the one thing the Bulls fans can hang their head on, because there's really no other power players in the East besides the Cavs that gives you the feeling that, yeah, maybe if the Bulls are healthy, they can make a run. I mean, they'll never truly be healthy with no outs, and that injury was really disappointing. So, I mean, yeah, if everything comes together, could they make it and maybe face the Cavs in second round or Eastern Conference Finals? Sure, I would not bet anything on had that happening. Like I said, I'd say it's more likely that they would lose in the first round than get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But, I mean, you never know. I'm not going to completely give up on them because they do have the talent, so it'll be interesting.
Jason Patt joining us here. Be sure to check him out on Twitter at Bulls_J. A couple more questions before we let you go here, Jay. So when I look at this Bulls team, there's a couple of bench players, role players. I would say that somewhere along the lines, I got to start thinking that Fred Hoiberg has got to start letting these guys loose. Guys like Bobby Portis, Dougie McBuckets, and then clearly there has been this waiting game for Nikola Mirotic to really kind of evolve from what he showed last year playing under Thibodeau's system. And clearly he seems to be very lost being able to thrive and show what he's capable of playing for Hoiberg. But you got to start wondering that if this basketball team is going to get broken up or certain pieces are certainly not going to be a part of this Bulls organization moving forward, who are the guys that you're looking at saying, you know what, I want to see these guys get some significant minutes. I think that they can definitely be a part of that future piece to help this Bulls team rebound a little bit more soundly than how they've been looking since they lost their best player in Jimmy Butler, and as far as what they're going to have to do for the offseason.
Yeah, just going down the line there, like I said, Portis has been an interesting case this year. I think he was a good pick. He's shown some flashes. He's also shown a lot of bad stuff. He's not very good defensively. The awareness is in there. He's also shown that he can be sometimes a bit of a black hole because a lot of times he gets the ball and he's going to shoot it. I still think he's got a lot of promise. He's young. He's pretty athletic. He brings a lot of energy. He's got a nice jump shot. I think he'll definitely be a guy down the road. Well, I don't know if he'll ever be a star or anything like that, but solid. I think solid role player, solid guy to have on your team moving forward. McDermott, I've been really down on McDermott before. He's obviously been mostly good. He's had that stretch of really good games. The last few haven't been quite as good. I still would like to see a lot more out of him. Just because he's obviously a great shooter. He was a great shooter in college. He struggled last year in his rookie year. Had the injury, didn't help, but he's still got to show a little bit more in those other areas of the game. Because as good as he is as a shooter, and as he's been showing moving off the ball and as a cutter, and with some of these dunks lately, he doesn't really rebound. He can't play defense. He can't really facilitate as a passer. So there's still a lot missing there in his game that I would like. He's never going to be great at it because that's not who he is. But if he could just show a little more in that game, he can be a valuable role player, especially with Fred around with his shooting. And then, Mirotic is also another interesting case. I was really expecting him to have a breakout year this year, and he just hasn't happened. And then he had this weird thing with the appendectomy, just terrible setback, and now he's got to get some weight back. He seems like he'd be an ideal guy in Hoiberg's offense as a stretch four. He can handle the ball a bit. He can create offense for himself. For whatever reason, really hasn't worked out. I think probably one of the reasons is he's kind of been relegated to more of a spot-up shooter instead of because Rose and Butler are dominating the ball so much when Nico was so good last year when Rose and Butler were out last March and he was putting up 20 points a game. That was because he was dominating the ball a lot. So he's got to make an adjustment to being a more off-the-ball player, picking his spots right. Because too often his dumb pump fakes, and he just doesn't look like he's always sure of himself out there, and his jumper is inconsistent. So I still do have some faith in him. Next year is going to be the last year of his contract, and they'll have to make a decision on him moving forward. But I'm not completely done with him yet. I still think he can be a really nice player for them.
Before we get out of here, I think we have to answer, ask the biggest elephant question in the room here. And what is your opinion, in essence, of, Derrick Rose and his future on this roster? I think he's settled into a little bit of a lesser role, obviously understanding that this is Butler's team, and he's really behind Gasol as well when it comes to, touches offensively. But where do you see the Bulls going with Rose overall for the future this season and the rest of the time he may have in Chicago?
Yeah, that's really tough because obviously he's got a huge contract now. He's going to be a free agent in 2017, and I mean he's looked a lot better lately. He's scoring more efficiently. His assists have been up, but he still not the most reliable with the soreness and the injuries, and who knows what happens moving forward with that, and who knows what kind of contract he's going to be looking for. I mean, even if he does finish this year strong, and if he has another similar year next year, like if he's looking for huge contract moving forward, like can the Bulls really give that to him and be giving him another $20+ million contract, locking themselves into that, even with the cap going up? I'm just not really sure. Like I like what I see with the aggressiveness on offense, driving the basket, and he's finishing better now, but he's still not been that good defensively. And even as good as Rose has been playing, even when with Butler out, the Bulls are still getting spanked a lot with him on the court. So that's obviously not all his fault because a lot of his teammates have let him down. But it's gonna be really tough, and that's obviously going to be a huge question moving forward. Whether this offseason and then next year, like, do they look to trade him at next year's trade deadline? Like, I personally don't think the Bulls are going to trade him. I don't think I would trade him either. I kind of just want to see him play it out and see what happens, and they come to the negotiating table in 2017, and hopefully they'd be able to work out a lesser deal. But I would not give him like a max contract or anything close to that unless he somehow comes back next year and is or in the playoffs and as is just awesome.
Chicago Bulls in a fight for their playoff lives as they try to maintain their status and being in the playoff picture. And our man, Jason Patt, who's keeping a very close watch of the road to perdition for the Chicago Bulls moving forward towards the end of this regular season and possibly into the playoffs. You can always find Jason at Bulls_J, managing editor for Today's Fast Break. Go to www.todaysfastbreak.com, and he also contributes for SB Nation's blog of Bull. Jason, we really appreciate you hopping on this week, helping us break down Bulls basketball, man.
Yep, thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, you're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. All right, Shaw, so a couple of good topics that we have on slate here, and kudos to you, my friend, because you are the one who came up with these. So I don't have the the sound bar thing, the sound bar rolling here, so I'd give you the proper applause when necessary. But the first topic that I think is really worth discussing clearly is the Boston Celtics. I mean, we could talk about the Chicago Bulls and how much they struggled, but we have to talk about the Boston Celtics. And, do we consider this Celtics team, by standards of this NBA season, an elite basketball team in the Eastern Conference? And I think it's a legitimate question, Shaw. There's nothing, when you look at what the record reflects for this Boston Celtics team, even as we record this podcast, that would tell me differently, that we should not really supplant them as an elite team in the Eastern Conference. They have beaten the best team in the Eastern Conference, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have defeated, I believe, the Toronto Raptors. And it's not saying that they will do that in a 7-game series. I'm just saying they have the ability to beat these teams. Whether or not they're capable of beating them through a stretch of a playoff, I think, is another question. But we're talking about for the regular season, should this be considered as an elite team? If you're basically 11 games over 500, why would you not be considered an elite team in the Eastern Conference?
Well, and I think that's the $1 million question. What it boils down to is the fact that they still don't have, everybody says they don't have that elite player. Even our man Jason Patt came on and kind of alluded to the same thing. In a game, I think against the Knicks where they came back, Isaiah had said the same thing. Is like, listen, do you still feel that way? Talking to the media in the game where he had like maybe 28 and 9 assists or something like that. Isaiah takes that to heart when they say those types of things. And I listen. At the end of the day, he's a great guy. He's a great player with a great heart, and he's willed the Celtics single-handedly to a lot of wins. But this is a great regular season basketball team right now, and I think in terms of being elite, in terms of their record and what their positioning is in the Eastern Conference, that is legitimate. But it's not unwise or unfair to question what they were going to be able to do in the playoffs. The best thing that has happened for the Boston Celtics is that they kept all their picks. They didn't move anything around at the trade deadline, and this team has still been able to succeed. So that puts them now in a position to be really good come this summer, having cap space like everybody else will have, having team chemistry and continuity, having a stable front office management, and having one of the NBA's premier coaches right now. We can honestly say that. But are they an elite team in the Eastern Conference where you think the Cleveland Cavaliers or even the Toronto Raptors, you think those teams are worried about the Celtics? I don't think we're there just yet.
All right. Well, I agree and then I disagree. I don't think it's a question about worrying teams. I think it's a question about, understanding where this team fits. You get what I'm saying? Like, there's a reason why we felt like there had to be changes for the playoff seedings, right? Because clearly it just wasn't justified when you look at how some of these teams were being placed. Their record is not reflective of what they were doing to get themselves to be in the playoffs. So you essentially could have been a team that's under 500, wins your division, and you're suddenly being placed as a 4 seed. That's unrealistic. You can clearly look at that team and not consider them as an elite team, not just about what the record reflects, but clearly because when you look at the rest of the division, they clearly have not played a, superior schedule. Now, to the credit of the Atlantic Division, The Toronto Raptors are playing at a very high level, a level where we want to have that conversation of saying, can they be a team that beats the Cleveland Cavaliers? And then there are the Celtics, and right beneath the Celtics are the New York Knicks, right? And the New York Knicks, while they are not a great basketball team, during the course of the year, they look like a basketball team that was going to be competitive, and they are a competitive basketball team. They're just not good, right? We still have to acknowledge what they are in reference to the fact that they're not the worst team in the NBA. They are where their record reflects. So if you're the third best team in the NBA, and we go by the fact that, you know, the four best records are considered the top seeds, you know, obviously the 1 and 2 are your top seeds. You know, from that perspective, I still say that, you know what, the Celtics are still at a level for the conference, should be considered as an elite team. They're better than the other 5 teams that are not in the playoffs and the rest of the pack following behind that remain, that would be chasing to be in the playoff picture.
Well, yeah, and I don't disagree from that standpoint too. I mean, you look at this team; they are pretty much an analytical darling. You know, 4th in points per game, 9th in offensive rating, 4th in defensive rating, and really are a team that forces a lot of steals and gets you to turn the ball over. This Boston Celtics team has done a great job this season, and again, and building that overall team chemistry. And you see them again ranked almost in the top 10 of over almost anything that's really efficient. You know, from today's standpoint, except for 3-point shooting. Again, I love what they've been able to do this year. I love that they've kept their core in place. I mean, it just really speaks to the stability of this franchise, and that Danny Ainge, although many have questioned him in the past, including myself, they really are going in the right direction. But I really think it is going to be about matchups with them when it comes to the playoffs. And again, we just had Jason Patt on talk about the Bulls. I think a Bulls matchup for Boston is not the easiest matchup, especially with Gasol, who still can give them problems inside, and especially since he's a good passer from the wing and post areas. So that's something that I think the Celtics, it really is going to be a matter about who they match up with. They end up in a 4 matchup against versus Atlanta Hawks. You know, the Atlanta Hawks have given them some problems. They've handled the Heat pretty well this season. So maybe that's a team that they could potentially get past per se, but it really is going to be about matchups, as it is going to be for everybody in the Eastern Conference, but specifically for the Celtics.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our segment of The Drop. So let's kind of put a stamp on this. If we're saying that they are considered an elite NBA team altogether, that to me, I think we both agree that's a no. But in reference to the conference itself, would they be considered as an elite team?
In reference to the conference itself, yeah, I mean, again, their record states that they are. They're the third.
The reason why I say that, Shaw, is because ultimately we still need to have a team that has to come out of the conference in order to get to be a representative for the East in the NBA Finals, and there is no guarantee that any of these teams are above all going to be better than the Golden State Warriors, might not even be better than the San Antonio Spurs, but I don't think it diminishes the fact that they can be considered an elite team by the body of work that they've shown with the record that they have for the regular season.
Right. And again, I agree with that standpoint. Listen, I don't feel like they're going to play anybody and get rolled over. I don't think like if they were to play the Cleveland Cavaliers at some point in the playoffs that you'd be seeing a sweep like you did a season ago. I think having built that overall chemistry, getting another year under their belt and understanding what the playoffs are like, the intensity and what needs to be brought in that situation, I think the Celtics are prepared for that. And you've seen them gut out so many wins this year, come from behind. They never, ever, ever give up. And it's because of exactly what we're talking about right now. They hear all this chatter that they're not elite, that they need a star, and all of those things, that they really have, our word here. They've galvanized themselves as a roster and as a unit in the Eastern Conference and even in the NBA. They played Golden State very, very tough, when Golden State came to Boston. So that game went to double overtime, if I remember correctly. And then Golden State promptly went out and lost to Milwaukee the following night. In essence, a lot of people saying the Celtics softened them up, if you will. So you've seen them play really well against some of the elite teams that everybody has no question about in the NBA, not just the Eastern Conference.
Can a superstar emerge in the playoffs for the Boston Celtics?
Man, I think that's a great question, and I don't know that a superstar will emerge for them. I think it is really going to be by committee. A lot of team basketball where you see Jay Crowder have a couple 15 to 20-point games. Isaiah is going to be your most consistent scorer, but Marcus Smart coming off the bench, another guy who can do kind of everything offensively and defensively, especially if his three-point shot is falling. And then the guys like Olynyk and Sullinger, they've got to contribute and do their thing as well too. Amir Johnson with his timely rebounding and setting screens and all the little analytical technical things that that a lot of players like him don't usually get credit for, it's going to be a team effort. But I don't know that a superstar in essence is going to emerge. I think you'll see very good consistency from Isaiah. But remember, in the playoffs, that's where, defense is really key in. And I don't know if Isaiah is going to be able to have the same percentages and efficiency that he's had throughout the regular season come playoff time. And it would then require somebody else to step up. I don't know who that will be per se, and I just don't think it'll be a superstar. I think it would have to be a team effort.
All right, Shaw, let's go ahead and switch gears and focus our attention on the team that we clearly say is the elite team in the East, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And given the fact that this still is a successful basketball team, already over 40 wins, and clearly on pace to drop a nice 6-0 in the regular season, there's a lot of unrest that's happening right now, and too many reports about whether or not this team is completely gelled together, whether or not Tyronn Lue has a complete has his finger on the pulse of this team. We've seen the recent reports, LeBron James leaving to go hang with his boy Dwayne Wade. They're chilling, working out at the gym, and then amidst like the litany of questions being asked, questioning his commitment, whether or not he's still about the team. Why continue to hang with Dwayne Wade when your focus should be with, gelling guys like Kyrie Irving and with Kevin Love. And, and then there's reports now about Kyrie Irving being unhappy. I mean, how tenable is this situation that we're talking about with Cleveland? Because I think that this is more than about whether or not winning can cure all ills. I don't even think even winning a championship is going to be able to galvanize this basketball team to a level where they buy into the idea that something great could be formed with this three.
And this is why it's a great topic, because we're not even necessarily talking about this team and how they're playing per se. It's all about the noise that surrounds them, all the distractions about their chemistry and if their roster really is a fit, for a long time as a team that can continue to be a perennial finals contender, not just playoff contender, but finals contender. And I don't know, man. I'm really to the point right now when you see LeBron do these things. Listen, he likes to play little mind games. He likes to have the upper hand. And all the old school guys have been talking about it. Oh, why is he working out?
But Shaw, you remember last year he was playing these same mind games with Kevin Love. He basically was putting Kevin Love on blast in the media, kind of throwing him under the bus. And I don't know if whether or not that shook a core and the nerve of Kevin Love, and he started, suddenly started playing, this above the rim like type basketball that he thought, or he should have been commanding out of Kevin Love. And then we saw, Kevin Love suffer that injury. I still don't know if whether or not that relationship between Kevin Love and LeBron James is truly mended to a point where they both are on page or on point, focus wise on getting this team to where they think that they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, the Kevin Love situation is that's going to be something no matter what, especially if they don't win a championship. You're going to hear Love's name mentioned and rumored everywhere, starting from the end of the finals to the day of the draft and all the way throughout the summer until something actually happens. So I don't know if that situation has ever been or ever will be put to rest, especially if they don't win. But again, it is unfortunate that LeBron wants to continue to have, the upper hand in this situation when it comes to like, listen, I'm only going to sign 1-year deals for the rest of my career. So that, again, from a business standpoint, you can always keep his options open, but can always get the biggest lion's share of the salary, for each season. So from that aspect, you have to understand it, but it does put Cleveland in a tenuous situation, or any team that's going to deal with LeBron in a tenuous situation. But that's what you get when you're perceived to be the best player in the game, although Stephen Curry has obviously closed that margin considerably in recent years. The other issue that I have here right now is, the report about Kyrie Irving and whether or not that was something. There's been some, backdoor basketball Twitter talks, if you will, of if Kyrie Irving would be a trade candidate for maybe the Clippers, and bring in Chris Paul, somebody who's a little bit more established, obviously is a little bit more of a distributor, doesn't need to score as much as Kyrie does, and bringing him over to a quote unquote ready-made situation in Cleveland. Again, that's not something that gained any traction. It's just something that's kind of been talked about, in the whispers of Twitter, if you will. But these are the type of things now that you have to start to wonder: can these guys really, really mesh together? Kyrie, Kevin Love and LeBron James to bring a championship to the land.
All right, put a stamp on it, Shaw. Do you see this realistically happening? Because I'll be straight up with you. I don't realistically see these guys winning a championship. I question it when they form this trifecta, this trio together, and I've still questioned it. And it's not even to the magnitude anymore about them as the players as much as it is what's surrounding the players. I mean, we're talking about a lot of the noise, but we're also talking about where is management in this? Where is the role of the PR people, the general manager, David Griffin, Dan Gilbert, where Tyrone Lue? It just seems like it's all completely above their heads or just completely blowing in out of one ear out the other, like they're completely ignoring it. I'm not saying that they're supposed to step up and say something, but they clearly have to take a different direction in how to quiet this noise down, because I really think too much is getting aired out, and we're now not questioning the talent as much as we're questioning the mental stability of this team being able to handle the rigors of taking these lofty expectations of finally bringing a championship to a city that's been clamoring for it for so long. They're getting a second crack at having their prodigal son return, their chosen one come back. And for all we know right now, his heart and his mind is completely not still embedded. Like, he keeps talking about how he's that kid from Akron, still doesn't feel like he's that kid from Cleveland.
Yeah, it's tough, brother. I mean, I really agree with what you're saying, that a lot of this has to do with the management and ownership. Although they're
I'm not
smart
completely
individuals.
blaming them. I'm just saying, where are they in this? Because even at some point, you as a management, as an organization, should have to start feeling like, you know what? We really cannot be having this happen. I think in some respects, I think that's part of what we're seeing also from a few years ago. Remember with Kevin Durant, when the writer from the Oklahoman had basically called out Kevin Durant during the playoffs, and ultimately Kevin Durant fired shots back. I think that, part of why Kevin Durant may be talking about having 1 foot out the front door, aside from that cap money, is, does the organization truly have his back at this point? Forget about Brooks getting let go. I'm just talking about certain things that happen when you're considered a superstar as an organization, to show that there is a level of loyalty and respect. It doesn't necessarily mean in the paycheck as much as it means on how you protect your players from getting scrutinized by the media and by the fans.
Well, and again, that's what I'm saying. I still feel like there is a level of blame, and there's enough blame to go around for everybody. I think, LeBron, being the leader of this team, has to take a certain level of responsibility and understand that he is scrutinized in things that he does, and not say that he can't live his life, but understanding that certain things are going to be picked apart and cause undue stress and undue pressure, not only on himself, not only on the organization, but the upper level management and the fans and everybody that's supporting the Cleveland Cavaliers. Is like, damn, what's really going on here? Secondly, to the point of the management situation, I really do feel like these are smart individuals who know how to manage the cap and try to get the roster together, but they may not have the most PR friendly when it comes to protecting their guys and not having as many leaks come out of that organization, as that seems to be the problem that's rampant in the NBA today. So I at the end of the day, I don't think Cleveland is a team that is going to be in the same form as we see them today next year. I think one of those 3 guys for sure, and obviously LeBron being most likely to stay. I think you'll see Kevin Love as the most likely to go, but I wouldn't rule out something happening with Kyrie, especially if they don't do as well as they hope to do in the playoffs.
Shaw, I want to get your take. Where do you think the bond is most strong with? Is it LeBron and Kyrie, LeBron and Kevin Love,
no
or Kyrie and Kevin Love? Like, in other words, we're talking about, if LeBron stays, but, if something were to happen to Kevin Love, would it prompt Kyrie Irving to now want to accelerate his desire to leave Cleveland because of the fact that he may, like, even knowing that he probably has a lot of love and respect for LeBron James, probably just is like, yo, I cannot be who I want to be playing next to this dude, and I got to keep it moving. Where do you feel the bond is most strongest?
Well, I feel that the bond is the strongest with LeBron and Kyrie. And I feel like Kyrie is the middleman, between all 3 of those guys. And, it's the same thing similar to when LeBron was in Miami and, Bosh was kind of the odd man out. LeBron and Wade really had a true kinship and really our friendship, as you can see, as evidenced by some of the discussion we've even had, in this topic right here. But LeBron and Kyrie aren't what LeBron and Wade were. So it's not quite the same thing, but they still seem to be a little bit closer together. And maybe even because of overall skill skill level, being number one draft picks, the whole nine, and what they've had to endure as in their time in Cleveland. I think LeBron can relate to Kyrie and some of the early struggles that Kyrie had and same thing LeBron had when he was in Cleveland too. So I think that's where those bonds are probably the strongest. But at the end of the day, Kyrie's probably the middleman here, and maybe that's another result of maybe why you're hearing some of these reports. Maybe he's tired of playing the middleman. He's like, you know what? I just need to get out of the situation altogether. Although he's refuting those things right now, I think there's some fire to the smoke that we see here in Cleveland.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Finally, Shaw, and when we summate this as for what it represents, and we're talking about this Cleveland Cavaliers team, what would happen to change this completely? Do you really believe that a championship changes the complexity of how this is all kind of arisen in the focus and the spotlight so negatively being on the Cavaliers? Or is it fool's gold? Like basically it's still an accident waiting to happen, kind of similar to the dominance between Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, where as great as they were at some point, it just really was going to happen where they needed to part ways.
Well, they'll need to win first to have that even be something that we can truly delve into. I mean, winning for most people does cure all at the same time, but they haven't won. And then winning a championship in Cleveland is, it's on another level than it is in some other organizations right now. So if they're able to come together and really get this done and somehow pull together and play on into June and win a championship, you'll see a lot of things change and a lot of the narrative change on the Cavaliers in terms of the players and who's available and the whole nine. But I do very much agree with you that this could be a situation that it can't last forever. And at some point, no matter what, it's going to break up.
All right. You're tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time to go coast to coast, discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
Then bye, we out. Man, to tell you, every single week, man, they got me doing my Sean Paul rendition. Ty Lawson, bought out by the Houston Rockets. Indiana Pacers move Chase Budden out the front door, and they're looking to go ahead and make room to get Ty Lawson in, which is going to happen. The Phoenix Suns are now looking at Chase Budinger, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves have finally bought out Kevin Martin, which means that the San Antonio Spurs get to have another trigger-happy shooter on their roster, probably to replace Danny Green, who, like you said in the previous week, is having an absolutely abysmal season. Man, things are looking up for this playoff picture, brother.
It's really wild out here. I think the Ty Lawson move is very interesting. There weren't a lot of situations for him where he could go to and get a lot of minutes. Indiana, they definitely needed a backup point guard, so I think he can help them, especially for their stretch run as they try to improve their seeding in the Eastern Conference. I think that's going to have the most significant impact. Budinger going to Phoenix, that's not really going to make much of a move. As we know, Phoenix has had their lost season. That unfortunately means that Sonny Weems also got waived so that Budinger could get there, as Budinger was waived so Ty Lawson could go to Indiana. So it's a bunch of moving pieces. I think the most interesting thing that people are looking at is Kevin Martin signing by the San Antonio Spurs, how that's going to affect their overall roster. It just gives them another veteran and a guy who can come in there and give you 6 quick points if necessary. I don't think he's going to get a ton of time, but especially in the playoffs, I think he will be able to, he'll be one of those veteran guys who'll be ready to rock. And it's funny to me simply that the Spurs now have 2 Timberwolves on their team with Andre Miller and Kevin Martin. Just goes to show you, what the Spurs will do to win a championship.
Interesting. You don't think that Kevin Martin is going to be able to take some of those minutes that Danny Green is getting? I mean, I don't know, man. Listen, what is Danny Green offering the San Antonio Spurs really throughout this season that Kevin Martin really couldn't offer? From a defensive principle standpoint, I'm pretty sure Greg Popovich doesn't mind. I think Kevin Martin could probably hold his own. They're still a great team defensively, but man, they definitely need a lot better shooting from the wings. It can't all be on Kawhi Leonard.
No, I agree with that, but I think they're going to look more from guys that have been there before. We're going to talk about this. We might as well just get to it right now. Manu Ginobili has returned for the Spurs after having having that injury to the groin area. And a lot of people are saying, even our guys from Project Spurs are saying, listen, what was reported isn't even what really went down. Like Ginobili was really, really in bad shape, and the fact that he's already back is kudos to him. And again, just because of the sensitivity of it, the Spurs didn't really want to put a lot of news information out there. But Ginobili came back, looked really great in his comeback game. I think he shot like 8 of 9 or something like that immediately, and maybe just happy to be out there. But I think that's where they're going to try to get their wing help, if you will, just trying to get Ginobili back out the floor.
All right, and now out in OKC, I guess they're looking to bolster their front court, albeit that how can you not already have a front court that's good enough with Steve Adams and Enes Kanter, and you still got Mitch McGary, who barely seen any playing time. They went ahead and signed there Nazir Muhammad. Clearly they're not signing him for the name because he reminds them of Nas Escobar. So what the heck are they signing Nazir Muhammad for, brother?
No, just a guy who's been there before, understands their chemistry, their makeup. Obviously wasn't there when hasn't been there since Billy Donovan has been the coach, but understands the core guys, and it just is a really good guy to have in the locker room. I was a little surprised because I didn't think they necessarily needed front court help. I thought they could have used somebody else, maybe at that 2 and even 3 position. I know they got Randy Foy. They have been playing kind of the 1 and 2, but I just don't really like what Roberson has given them. I know he's supposed to be a defender. I would have liked to see them get a shooter or another shooting guard. But again, like I said, maybe there's nothing out there that interests them.
All right, out in Houston, man. Oh man, listen. We probably should have saved this one for last, but why not? I mean, if the Rockets are figuring out a way to put themselves in the headlines, I mean, what better way to do that than by signing the Chinese Basketball Association MVP this past season, Michael Beasley. Yes, Michael Beasley. So now that the Rockets, so now that the Rockets got be easy on the court now, I mean, is Bickerstaff going to actually play this dude, or are we just going to basically relegate to watching him just sit there on the sideline sporting, he probably added like 15 or 20 more tattoos since playing in the Chinese Basketball Association, but I mean, is this guy going to actually get some run?
No, he is. He played over the weekend, came in there and came out firing. He's like, hey, I'm here now. Guess what? These shots are going up. So I think he was 0 of his first 5 or something like that, and they get another left-handed guy, another guy who potentially, in essence, could be able to score and help them on the boards. But between he, Terrence Jones, Josh Smith, Montezumas, and Harden, they have as many lefties as the Miami Heat do right now. So, Beasley is not somebody I think is going to make a significant impact for them, but he wasn't brought there to just sit on the bench. He's going to play, and hopefully for them, he does make some sort of a positive impact.
All right, out in New Orleans, why am I not surprised about this? Eric Gordon has broken the same finger, and now he's gone again for another 4 weeks. Didn't he not just come off of the IR not too long ago?
Yeah, just last week, and they're saying he might be done for the season, and he might as well be. New Orleans is not making the playoffs, so let's just go ahead and wrap it up here for EG. Let Norris Cole and Drew Holiday run things out there for the Pelicans for the rest of the season, and this just put the season to rest. I know it was a contract year for him, so he's very disappointed and wants to make a bigger impression, but he's played well when he's been able to stay healthy for the most part. Maybe that'll be enough for him this summer.
Maybe.
I know you're not confident.
Listen. We talked about it before, bro. I'm saying let's put it to rest.
One of your guys.
Yeah, man. I'm just saying, he needs to find a new home. Can't be hanging around in the Ninth Ward any longer. Out in Washington, Bradley Beal. We just had this conversation about how if Bradley Beal was not injured, how much of a top backcourt to him and the combination of John Wall would be. Well, again, he gets injured, so we can put that to rest as well too, because we really don't know the makeup of this basketball team moving forward. Without a healthy Bradley Beal, which again just doesn't seem like that's ever going to come to fruition. Yeah,
we don't know the length of time. What was really going to happen with Bradley here. He hurt his pelvis. Which is just an odd injury anywhere, let alone on the basketball court. But hopefully, again, he's had a rough career when it comes to overcoming injuries. And the Wizards trying to make a run and get back in the conversation. The 8th seed, they had a couple ups and downs, but now, losing Beal again would really, really hinder and pretty much end any chance they have of making the playoffs if you're going to miss any type of significant time.
All right, Sean, finally, listen, we talked about this earlier during the year. We kind of scratched our heads and said if whether or not it was conceivable or possible. But Baron Davis, he's figured out a way to take that first step in this comeback of trying to get into the NBA. He signed with the Delaware 87ers. He's now playing in the D-League, Shaw. How realistic is this going to be that he actually finds himself playing with an NBA basketball team?
Well, he's being realistic about where he could go. He looked at a team like saying, hey, I'd love to play for the Philadelphia 76ers, because again, he knows that's a spot where he can actually go and maybe get some minutes potentially. He'd play ahead of a TJ McConnell or somebody like that, not ahead of Ish Smith, but he can go definitely be a backup point guard. Had 14 points in his debut over the weekend here, so I think 14, 3 and 2. He was able to do a little bit of something out there. I guess he's serious about it. Kudos to him, man. B. Diddy, we wish you all the best, man. Salute to you and your journey coming back to the NBA.
Yeah, some straight up salutes. I mean, man, just like 21 gun salute for Baron Davis, man. I mean, this dude, I mean, he was such a great player, man. And
one of my
shame the
favorites.
injuries. Yeah, there's such a shame the injuries is, really derailed his career. But you know what? It'll be such a great story if he does make his way back onto the parquet floor and really makes things happen for any basketball team. Just one of those great competitors that I think the game still needs if he's able to play at that level. Excellent show this week, Shaw, man. Great stuff as always. And, man, it's just looking really, really nice, man, as we're heading down this home stretch.
I'm excited about it. I think we have a lot of great races that we're going to continue to see taking place both in the Eastern and Western Conference. Basically, 3 through 8 through 10, really 3 through 10 in the Eastern Conference, and then 6 through maybe 9 or so in the West. Lots of things can be happening and moving and shaking over the next couple of weeks. And we'll be right here as always to touch base and bring it to you live every single week, man. So great show. Thanks for joining us, and I'll let my man CL here finish us out.
No, most definitely, man. So once again, we'd like to thank our man, Jason Patt. Be sure to check him out. He does this thing with Today's Fast Break, managing editor, and he's also on Bloggable on SB Nation. So be sure to catch him. He's also available on Twitter at Bulls_J. For the Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch up with you next time.